Hello, Fiendlings. How the hell are you? About 8 years ago, Severed Press published The Black, Outbreak. Around 4 years ago, I wrote the fourth novel in the Black series, which has never been published, until now. As of today, The Black Evolution, the fourth installment, is available at Amazon.com in ebook and trade paperback. Considering it's languished on my hard drive for the better part of 5 years, it feels good to finally kick this one out into the world. If you want to support the podcast and help fund the audiobook version of Evolution, please consider going to Amazon.com and purchasing Evolution or one of my other novels. With that, I'm going to sign off and let you get back to Ben Taub and the creature lurking inside. Be safe, have a great week, and we'll talk again real soon. Here's episode 17 of The Black, Outbreak.
Chapter 34. Ears ringing, the world sounded muffled and distant. She opened her eyes and cursed. The light was so goddamned bright. It's the explosion, she told herself. You might have a concussion. Yeah, right. Grenade. What a great idea that was. Wait, where's the thing? The thought got her moving. She raised her head and rifle. The rest of her team was getting to their feet. The shockwave had practically knocked everyone over, or at least off balance. But that didn't make sense. The wall nearest the clinic was blown outward. She could see the city street through part of it. The explosion had been powerful enough to destroy all the sheetrock and take bricks with it. The non-load-bearing walls that separated the clinic from the rest of the floor were in ruins. They looked as though an artillery shell had hit them. Even the concrete floor was missing large chunks, and in one of the huge divots, she could see the crawl space between the first and second floors. "What the fuck just happened?" Perkins asked. Sarah looked at him. He was right next to her, but his voice sounded as if it were miles away. "I don't know." She turned to Givens. The Kentuckian had a slight smile on his face. "You carrying nuclear ordnance, soldier?" "Nah, boss," he drawled, "but I think Mr. Monster detonated." He was right. There was no sign of the creature. It had simply vaporized into nothing. She looked at the ceiling above the clinic. Most of the tiles were missing. Wires and pipes hung down into the room beyond. A grenade couldn't have done that kind of damage. It had to have been a combination of the creature and the grenade. "Fire?" she asked aloud. "What, boss?" Perkins said. He put a finger in his ear as if trying to clear it. "Moore, this is Celie-Anne." "Here. Is the creature destroyed?" "I think so," Sarah said. "One of my men tossed a grenade at it. It was effective." Pause. "Yes, it was. So effective you blew out part of the building." Sarah blinked. "What?" "I can see part of the building's steel frame through one of my feeds. You're lucky to be alive." "Got that right," she said. "Dr. Harrell told us about using UV light. Have you confirmed that fire works?" Pause. "We're getting some reports from the oil rig. Sounds like the hostel is flammable, but we don't yet have confirmation." "Understood. We're going to clear the area, and then I want to send these people down to the first floor." When Moore spoke, her voice held a frosty edge. "You will clear this floor, but you will not, I repeat, not send those people down. They are to stay exactly where they are." "Why?" "Think about it, Lieutenant. If you send them down there, someone will panic and try to get out of the building. If that happens, my soldiers will have no choice but to shoot them." Shit, she thought. Moore was right. Goddamn civvies wouldn't be able to help themselves. Unless... "Moore, let's send them to the ER basement with the others. As long as they go that way, they should be fine." "Negative," Moore replied. "Keep them where they are. Trust me on this, Lieutenant. The best way to save these people is to get them out of harm's way. And as far as you're concerned, the first floor is more dangerous than anywhere else in the hospital. Is that understood?" She wanted to yell at the woman, explain just how insane her logic was. She wiped the side of her face, and it came away damp with blood. "Yes, ma'am," she said. "Are there any more hostiles on this floor?" Pause. "Not that we have seen, no, but we have confirmed casualties on the third floor." "Shit," Perkins said, his mic off. How the hell are they confirmed? Sarah glared at him. What's up there? We have 2 hostiles, Morse said. One appeared in the diagnostics lab. We lost sight of the other, but we believe it's heading to the maternity ward. Wait, what? You heard, Lieutenant. Please get your team there immediately. Acknowledged. She clicked off her mic and stared at her men. You know what you're facing now. You know what you have to do. She curled her lip into a sneer. We'll have time to toast O'Malley later. But right now we have to keep those people safe. Understood? Boss! The men yelled. She turned and ran to the stairwell, her men just behind her. The image of O'Malley's severed arm shot into her mind. Her rookie, her charge, her partner, dead. And now she was dragging the rest of the men to fight another of those things. And all they had to fight it were flashbangs and bullets. Sarah flung open the door and marched through it. She ran up the stairs as fast as she could, barely remembering to breathe. Givens and Perkins were no doubt on her heels, the 2 men hungry for some payback. They needed to find a way to fight the things without explosives if they wanted anyone to survive. Chapter 35. Dr. Ellis? Moore's voice piped through the command center's speakers. He looked up at the speaker in the wall and glared at it. In his left hand, he held a dropper. In his right, the test tube. He knew she could see him via the cameras. Didn't she know this was some dangerous shit? What? What are you doing? The woman's voice was infuriatingly calm. It made him feel like he was back in elementary school facing off with a patient but patronizing teacher. Worst of all, she was faceless. He put the test tube back in the holder and hissed air between his teeth. Now was the fun part. He moved the dropper into the middle of the stainless steel basin and squeezed the bulb. Another milliliter of the black substance dropped out onto the metal. Well, Dr. Moore, I'm trying to run some more tests if you don't mind. And what test would you be running now? He glared up at the camera in the corner. It was hot. He was tired. Worst of all, he was terrified. He'd been on a constant adrenaline rush for hours, but there was nothing left in the tank. Unless he managed to calm himself down and take it easy, he was going to crash. And if he was careless at the wrong moment, he was going to die. It was that simple. This, he said, is a test for flammability. Pause. And how are you going to do that? He grinned at the camera. Simple. We have a wand lighter for emergencies. Not exactly standard issue, but we like having them around. Never know when you're going to need to start a fire. Dr. Ellis, Moore said, you proved M2 is combustible with UV light. Correct, he said, but Harold told me the SWAT team doesn't exactly have UV light sources at their disposal. Would be nice to let them know if there's another weapon they can use. Pause. Good idea, Dr. Ellis. Continue. His eyes lingered over the camera for a moment. He wished he could see the woman, make eye contact, and glare at her long enough to make her uncomfortable. Instead, he was intimidating a goddamned camera. No, he thought, you're losing an intimidation battle with a camera. Ellis sighed and focused. The drop of black, a lifeless eye against a cold steel backdrop, seemed to stare at him. He wanted it to move, to do something, and at the same time he wanted it to just sit there and die. He reached out and picked up the lighter. The blue plastic wand felt sturdy in his gloved hand. He positioned its flexible end next to the blob of black. Face shield down, Ellis said a little prayer and pressed the lighter's trigger. A teardrop of orange and blue flame erupted from the end of the wand. The black drop slid sideways in a jiggling motion. He nearly jumped out of his chair, the lighter falling to the floor from his unsteady hands. The spot of darkness ceased moving. It was no longer in the basin's center, but to the left side. The steel, already shining and looking polished, now had a streak of ultra-reflective, mirror-polished metal. Holy shit, he thought. Doesn't have to be much of it to move around. It just needed a reason. Ellis kept his eyes on the drop until his breathing slowed and his heart no longer felt like it was going to leap through his ribcage. He glanced down at the lighter on the floor to gauge where it was and then looked back at the basin. The drop was in the same place. His suit crackled as he reached down and groped for the lighter, eyes still locked on the basin. One of his gloved fingers touched its edge, but he managed to knock it further away rather than closer. Cursing, he tore his eyes away from the hostile drop of liquid and picked up the lighter as fast as he could. Skin prickling with fear, he stood up quickly. The black was still in the basin, still in the same place, and motionless. Ellis took another deep breath. His heart finally slowed, but it took longer than he liked. The CDC doctor slowly stood holding the lighter in a shaking hand. He moved it next to the drop of dark fluid. Another deep breath, another silent prayer, and he clicked the button. The teardrop flame appeared again. The drop started to move, but Ellis stabbed out quickly. The flame touched the drop, and a centimeter-tall fireball erupted from the basin, leaving a scorch mark on the stainless steel surface. As with the UV light test, there was no remnant of the sample. It had combusted into nothing. Ellis slowly grinned. He tapped his mic. "Moore, you could tell the SWAT team that fire will work. This shit is highly combustible." "So I saw," Moore said. She sounded slightly disinterested. He fought the urge to scream at her, ask her why the hell he was bothering to risk his life when she's the one that had him trapped in here. In the end, he merely sighed. "I think this concludes the usefulness of my tests." Pause. "You are correct, Dr. Ellis. I don't see there's much more you can do from there." He looked up at the camera. "Good. Now get me the hell out of here." Pause. "I'm afraid I can't do that, Dr. Ellis. You've been exposed to the pathogen." "It's not a goddamn pathogen," he yelled. "It's alive, and not like a damned bacteria. Don't you get it? It grows faster than anything we've ever seen. It organizes itself and knows, even at the size of a milliliter, how to escape danger." Ellis threw up his hands. "It's not contagious in the traditional sense. Not at all." "You don't know that," Moore said. "Krieger was infected by a tiny amount of the substance, and it ended up killing dozens of people that we know of. And it's in the hospital right now, killing more people as we speak. We can't take the chance the same thing will happen if we let you out of there. You are in quarantine, and you will remain there until I'm satisfied that you and the contents of the command center are not a threat to anyone." The fear and terror he'd felt just moments before evaporated. Even the crushing exhaustion departed. What replaced them was white-hot anger. "I don't know who you are," he said to the camera, "and frankly, I don't give a shit. You want to help my team? You want to help those people in the hospital? Then get me the hell out of here so I can do my goddamn job." "You've done your job, Dr. Ellis," the calm, cold voice replied. "I suggest you get some sleep. I'll call you again with any updates or if I have any questions." "Fuck you," Moore sighed. "I understand how frustrating this must be, but I want you to put yourself in my position. Would you let a potentially virulent and dangerous organism out of a quarantine area?" "No," he said. "I wouldn't. But I also know when something's contained and when it's not. By your logic, any person in a hazard lab can never be let out." "Then allow me to elucidate, Doctor. You yourself said we don't know what this substance is, although it's certainly biological. You think the vector has come into direct contact with the host. But you can't say that for certain, can you?" He opened his mouth to reply and then stopped. "I can't perform those kinds of tests here." "No," she agreed, "you can't. You have had your respiratory protection off multiple times since you entered the vehicle with the sample. As soon as it was contained, you treated it like you would any other pathogen." "Correct." His mouth had gone dry. "And we both agree this is not a normal pathogen, don't we?" He nodded. There was no need to speak. She was no doubt watching his every facial tic. All the emotional oxygen feeding the fire inside him departed. The flames of anger sputtered and then died. She was right. God damn her, but she was right. He couldn't get out of here, not until they knew for sure and could prove it. So I'm stuck here for forever? No, Dr. Ellis. I'm not your enemy, and I'm not unreasonable. My team is working on a strategy to get you and the sample out of there. As soon as we do, you'll be the first to know. Until then, I suggest you try to sleep. Or at least rest. There's nothing more you can do from there, and you have done well. She could pay him all the compliments she wanted. It didn't matter. Bottom line, he was screwed, and they both knew it. Ellis heaved a sigh and stared at the sample test tube. There wasn't much of the substance left, but it was still more than enough to infect or even kill him. The only way he was getting out of here alive is if he figured out a way to destroy it without blowing himself to hell and back. You're right, he mumbled. What was that? Moore asked. He raised his eyes back to the camera. You're correct, Dr. Moore. Again, I'm sorry it has to be this way, Dr. Ellis. If you have any ideas to help my team solve your particular problem, please let me know. Thank you. The words dropped out of his mouth, tasting like ash. You're welcome. Get some rest. We'll talk soon. Ellis reached over and muted the command center microphones. He opened his mouth to yell, scream, anything to let out the anger and fury. But in the end, he bit his lip until it bled just to taste the blood. The pain was deliciously soothing and put him back on an even keel. He swiveled in the chair and faced the test tube of M2. The black substance sat in the shadows, inert, lifeless, and non-threatening, but he shivered just the same. Inside the hospital, there were people dying. Inside the hospital, monsters walked the halls. Inside the command center, there was just him and the black, waiting for rescue.